Hey, yo, what's going on, family? Good morning, man. Good morning. It's Tuesday, right? Tuesday. I'm actually headed, man. I got to go make some changes. I got some big meetings today. So be in prayer for your boy. But I want to jump on here real fast, man. Here is a lab. It's actually maybe the first of 2020, if I'm not mistaken. And this won't necessarily be an instructional lab. I guess it is instructional from the concept of actually it being some instructions given, but not necessarily instructional as far as how to. But I want to talk about the danger of a prayerless life as a minister. Most of you guys now have passed your testing and you've gotten your credentials and you're beginning to operate and beginning to flow in ministry. But one of the greatest misnomers in ministry is the fact that you can just operate off of your gift alone. Jesus, when he was on this planet, when the disciples came to him, they didn't ask him how to be powerful and proficient and profound. They never asked him how to make money. They never asked him that. But one of the things they did ask him was, Lord, teach us how to pray. Because as ministers of the gospel, it is imperative. I can't stress this enough. It is imperative that you have a prayer life that is very sacrificial. I can't give you a number. I can't tell you to pray 2 hours a day, 4 hours a day, 6 hours a day, whatever that may look like for you. It's imperative that it be very sacrificial, because the windows of heaven don't stay open just because you desire for them to be open. There's 3 different ways to open the windows of heaven. The first one is giving. It's tithing. The second one is obedience to God, always being in a place of obedience. And the third is through prayer. 3 ways to open the windows of heaven and to maintain the windows of heaven being open over your life and over your ministry. Let's go over those again. The first way is tithing. Malachi 3 tells us that. The second way is obedience. Isaiah tells us that. And the third way is through a vibrant prayer life. And we see that even with Elijah. The book of James says Elijah was a man that has like passions like us, but he prayed earnestly that it would not rain for 3 years and 6 months. And God hearkened to the voice of Elijah. So the reality is your prayer life will move stuff that your gift cannot move. Your gift will make room for you. Yes. Your gift will bring you before great men. Yes. But your prayer life will it will ensure that you have power when you get into the room. Can we talk? The gift will always make room for you, but your prayer life will ensure that you have power when you actually get into the room. I'm challenging you on this first lab of 2020. I'm challenging you to have a prayer life that is full of substance, to have a prayer life that is full of sacrifice, to have a prayer life that is full of passion, to have a prayer life that is full of power. Listen, full of fire. You need a prayer life that will wake you up in the morning, that will get you up early. You don't even have to be an intercessor. You don't have to carry the title of an intercessor. You may not flow in that vein, but you must have a prayer life. Listen, you cannot operate in a prayerless mode and be effective in ministry. You can be a statue in ministry. You can be an entertainer in ministry. You can become a monument in ministry, but you will not be effective in ministry if you do not have a powerful prayer life. It's convicting me even as we talk. The reality is we ought to be convicted as ministers about our prayer life. We ought to be convicted about the time that we spend with God, because it literally in that time that we get instructions as to the desires of God and what he desires to do in our lives. We're living in a time where a lot of people are beginning to move by emotions and move by feelings and be directed by their own desires, because we don't spend enough time in prayer. And so what we see is a lot of people who just make rash decisions, who move by how they feel. I feel like, but we don't move by what we feel. And the only way you can stop moving moving by your feelings, is you must be nailed into your purpose. And if you're going to be nailed into your purpose, it has to have prayer attached to it. So I submit to you this morning. Yeah, I'm moving, but I submit to you this morning that you cannot be a victim of a prayerless life. Your prayer life must be on point. I need you to say that with me. Your prayer life must be on point. There must be a craving, a urge, a burn, a pull, a passion in you for being intimate with God. Prayer is simply that. It pulls us into a place and a space of true intimacy with God. But I promise you, the greater your intimacy level with God, the greater the power and the anointing of God on your life is going to be. You will be more than gifted. We have produced a number of gifted preachers, and it's been great. And they've been wonderful for entertainment purposes. But if you ever want to see people who change the world, if you ever want to see people who change regions, if you ever want to see people who change cities, then you're going to find people who break themselves in prayer. You're going to find people who spend time laying out in prayer, in the closet, on the altar, at your house, in your car, wherever you are. You're going to find people who spend an immense amount of time in prayer. When you talk about the Azusa Street revivals and you talk about all the wonderful, tremendous moves of God in the earth, they were all birthed through prayer. When you look at the book of Acts, the 2nd chapter, and you see them all in one place with one accord, and you see a sound from heaven coming as a rushing mighty wind. They were all in one place and all with one accord out of obedience, but they were spending time in worship and spending time in prayer. So I submit to you, yes you, we've been talking for 7 minutes, and I don't want you to miss this, that this module, that this lab is strictly about your prayer life. As a minister, you must pray. Say it with me. You don't have choice. Two things you got to do as a preacher. You got to study and you got to pray. If you don't do nothing else, if you never tune up, if you never find your footing, if you never become proficient and profound in your articulation, what you must do is you must pray and you must study. Those are two staples of every minister who is going to be worth their size and salt, as my grandmother would say. If you're going to be effective in the kingdom of God, you must live a life of prayer. It's in prayer that God begins to expand our capacity to be able to receive. I feel like talking for a minute. It's in prayer that God begins to expand our capacity to be able to receive. There's some revelation that you're not going to get from God until you begin to spend time with God in prayer. It's literally in prayer that God begins to expand our capacity to be able to receive, to be able to reach beyond where we have limitations, and to be able to grab a hold to what seems to be unattainable. It's in prayer that God begins to unveil and reveal unto us our identity. It's in prayer that God begins to give us a strong passion and a strong pull to an office. I don't trust people who say they're called to be prophets and apostles and pastors and leaders and teachers and evangelists, and they don't spend any time in prayer. I don't trust you. Like, you literally have to have a burn for prayer. You literally ought to spend some time. You ought to say, you know what? I'm not doing anything today but praying. You ought to have a day of prayer. You ought to have a day that you just set aside to seek the face of God. Literally, when you begin to read the scripture, you begin to understand text, you begin to see what happens, the real benefits of seeking God, the real benefits of spending time in uninterrupted prayer. Let me say that again. The benefits of spending time in uninterrupted, unencumbered, unhindered prayer. The benefits of doing that is God begins to do surgery on you. It's literally not for the people. Now listen, you're going to pray because you're a minister, so you're going to carry people in your heart, and you're going to be able able to push people forward, and you're going to pray people in and pray people through and pray people forward and all that good stuff. But listen, it's in prayer that God begins to impress upon you, where he begins to do surgery on you, where he begins to unveil and reveal who you have been called to be. You cultivate the calling of God in prayer. Can we talk? You cultivate the calling of God in prayer. Let me give you some nuggets and I'm done. You cultivate the calling of God in prayer. The calling that's on your life, it's cultivated the more you spend in the face and the presence of God. The more you spend on your face and in the presence of God, God begins to cultivate that thing that he has placed on the inside of you. You have a treasure, you have a jewel, you have a diamond, but it's in prayer that God begins to cultivate it and begin to chip away at all of the access or the excess things that should not be there. And so he begins to strip away the things that you should not be holding on to. It's in prayer that God begins to plead and begin to pull out of you the things that should not be in you. It's literally in prayer. It's in that secret place. Every wonderful, earth-changing, earth-moving movement that has been birthed out of prayer. I don't care what it's been called. I don't care what the name of it was. I don't care who the leader of it was. I don't care how spectacular they were. I don't care how charismatic they were. I don't care what they carried. I promise you, in the natural realm, it would have been ineffective if there was not some sort of prayer life supporting that. Let me say it again. Regardless of how charismatic and how wonderful you are as a minister, as a leader, as a whatever you are, if it's unsupported by prayer, then it's going to be useless. Jesus, when he was walking the planet, the disciples said, teach us how to pray. Why? Because we've observed your life and we see the power of God that is on your life, and we see you steal away in the wee hours of the morning just to be alone with God. We see you who is the kenotic Christ, the Christ who has emptied himself out, 100% God and 100% man, but yet he still continues to seek God because he's trying to show them a pattern. He's trying to be their example. This is the way that you do it. Listen, you're going to have to spend time in prayer. I challenge you. Today's Tuesday, but I challenge you for the rest of this week to spend some substantial time in prayer, some significant time in prayer. Begin to ask God what he desires to do in three places. First of all, in you. Second of all, in the earth. Third of all, in the church. Let me say it again. First of all, what he desires to do in you. Second of all, what he desires to do in the earth. And third of all, what he desires to do at Church Without Walls. So I want to implore you. I'm begging you. I feel like the Apostle Paul now. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you develop your prayer life. You've got to develop your prayer life. I'm not talking about God, give me. I'm talking about God, strip me. I'm talking about laying out, crying unto God and saying, God, what is your will for this time? What is your will for this moment? What is your will for this season? I don't want to be outside of you. I want to be in the center of your will. I don't want to be outside looking and thinking and trying my best to obtain, because I promise you, if you'll spend time in prayer, it will give you an unfair advantage. The very aroma of God, the very aroma of God will be on your life, and the aroma of God is attractive to everything that you have been praying for. If you get the aroma of God on your life, favor will be a secondary. It will be attracted to you. If you get the aroma of God on your life, miracles will be secondary. They will be attracted to you. If you get the aroma of God on your life, you won't have to look and beg for another dime. Money will be attracted to you. The aroma of God literally pulls in in. It's so magnetic. It pulls in everything that you're going to need. Healing, peace, prosperity. It pulls in everything that you're going to need for ministry. But you got to have the aroma of God on your life. And the only way, preacher, the only way, leader, the only way, pastor, the only way, prophet, the only way, apostle, the only way, evangelist, the only way, teacher, is you've got to spend significant time in prayer. This is an admonishment, and this is also a lab. We're going to get more in depth into the lab. We're going to start building sermons. We're going to start talking about altar calls. We're going to start talking about all of these different things that need to be initiated by ministers. But before we get into all of that, I felt led. Literally, I was convicted in my heart. I felt pressed upon to say that to you, that we cannot be prayerless in this season. You cannot be prayerless in your life. You cannot be prayerless in your pursuit of God. You must, say that with me, I must have a significant, substantial prayer life. I ain't talking about God, give me. No, I'm talking about literally in his face, in his presence, breaking you and spending significant amounts of time with God. I am not just asking you, I am commanding you. Spend time in prayer. I'm commanding you that the aroma of God, I declare it over your life now, that as you spend time in prayer today, that the very aroma of God will just permeate you, that everywhere you go, people will smell Jehovah on your life. People will smell Yahweh on your life. You won't even have to say a word. Every need will be supplied. I declare it over your life that as you enter into this place of prayer and this time of prayer, of uninterrupted, undistracted, unencumbered prayer, that God begins to speak to you and give you details. For some, he's going to snatch you out of that low place that you've been in. He's going to snatch you out of that lull that you've been in. He's going to get your mind together. You're going to find a new stride of peace. I declare it over your life. You're going to find a new stride of peace over your life as you begin to pray, as you begin to pray, as you begin to break your plate. We're going on a fast. We're going to be consecrating all year long. This is the year of establishment, and you cannot have a frivolous prayer life and be established in this in this year. So I listen. I've been talking for a while. I normally don't do these this long, but there's nothing else I can say except pray. You need to be in prayer. God's about to work some things out. He's about to shift some things in your life. He's about to call forth order into your life. He's about to begin to work on those things that are out of the realm of control for you. He's about to control those things. I declare it that as you pray, clarity is coming to you. As you pray, your marriage is going to begin to change. As you pray, your mind is going to begin to change. As you pray, your ministry is going to begin to change. As you pray, your identity is going to begin to break and to change. Prayer is not just the key, it is a weapon, and it is the weapon of the preacher. I love you. Peace.